We continue to evaluate Mark Williams and whether he should start over Nick Richards the rest of Summer League. Plus, there's a couple of deadlines coming up for Miles Bridges and JT Thor. More Thor or less Thor? We'll talk about all of that today on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
We're Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free. We're available wherever you get your pods. That includes YouTube. You can follow me on Twitter at Walker Mail. That's Doug Branson on Twitter at Doug Branson LOH. He is also the originator of the Hornets, Every Hornets Boxscore, everyhornetsboxscore.com. That's his Substack. And what's your Substack? Did you change it?
What do you mean, did I change it? No, I didn't change it.
I thought you changed your Substack. I thought it was something different when I teased it yesterday. Now it's
it was hornets.substack.com, but
gotcha.
I got the domain name. Come on, man. I'm a professional. I'm locking down the domain name. Yeah.
What new website are you coming up with tomorrow that I need to tease? Anything?
No new website.
Can you just put it in the rundown? That's all.
Just read what I put the words in front of you and you read. That's how this works. You're the radio professional. I write the words and you read them. That's all you got to do.
Just go check it out at everyhornets.substackboxscore.com. Nah, I'm playing. Just go everyhornetsboxscore.com, and then you can check out some good content, just like you can here, because we're talking a lot more about Summer League. Let's continue to talk about the first-round pick, Mark Williams, Doug, because Jordan Surenkamp had some things to say about the big guy. He's been praising Mark quite a bit. A lot of people have been asking Surenkamp about him because he is one of the more interesting figures of this Summer League. And here's Surenkamp's quote on Mark. He said, quote, "I think Mark has been fantastic. He played about 18 minutes for us tonight," referring to game 2. "But when he's out there, he's learning in every possession. This is his second game as a pro, and we've played against some really good players and really good teams to this point, so he's getting thrown in the fire a little bit, but that's what Summer League is for." The question is, do we need to throw him in the fire more so than just 18 minutes because of this time that Nick Richards is getting? And I think pretty clearly, most of Hornets Twitter, most of the Hornets fans think Mark Williams even plays better than Nick Richards, and yet here's Richards getting all of this time. So what do you make of that big man situation between the one and the two?
Yeah, I think he needs more time. I think this is a player that's not fully cooked. He's going to need as much practice and training camp and summer league action to get acclimated to the pro game. Especially, I think, even more so on the offensive end. Defensively, he looks like he absolutely knows what he's doing. But here's the stats. Minutes per game, 18. He's got 4 points per game so far on 23% shooting. And he did take a three-pointer, and I want to get to that.
Yes. I can't believe we failed to mention that last episode.
I got a good question on my Substack about it, so we'll get to that in a minute. He's averaging, 7.5 rebounds per game. I think that's huge. I mean, definitely his ability to rebound the basketball is going to be key to getting Clifford to play this young man early on in his career. So he's been doing some good stuff on the boards. He's been doing some good stuff defensively. But obviously, the reason why Mark Williams, somebody who has a 7'7" wingspan, a 9'9" standing reach, I mean, the physical tools are all there. Why? And my big question to everyone that I could ask it to coming on the show around draft time was why is someone with all of these physical tools slipping all the way to 13th? Because that's where we projected him. He actually slipped all the way to 15th. And the answer I think that everyone landed on was that offensively, he's got some room to develop.
Yeah, and I think also, I think the athleticism laterally was a big reason as to why, because it's the idea of when you watch the playoffs, you see some of these bigs that can play in the postseason, deep into the postseason, because teams will go small. Mark Williams isn't great at guarding on the perimeter right now, even though we saw some nice improvement from him in the first 2 Summer League games where you're seeing him drop at the right time. You're seeing him make guards question what they need to do and keeping guys in front of them, helping at the right time. And that's the most important thing to me. I think that's the most important thing for most Hornets fans is the fact that he is playing so well defensively. I think the offense will come. This is not going to be a guy that shot over 70% from the field last year with Duke because he dunked everything, going to like even 50 in this NBA regular season. That's not going to happen. One, because he's not going to take that many difficult shots. He shouldn't. You don't want him to. You want him rolling to the basket, and then you're going to have better ball handlers feed him on those rolls. You're going to give him lobs, a lot better lobs than what anybody on this Summer League roster is going to do. You have freaking LaMelo Ball on this team. That alone is going to increase your point total and your efficiency. Yeah. Your point total at least, but like 4, your efficiency, through the roof. So I'm not worried about the efficiency. If you wanted to talk about him trying too much on offense where he was putting some guys on the dribble, okay. At the same time, I do think that ball handlers are going to help him. I think he's really hurt as much as anybody by the lack of good decision makers bringing up the ball, So I'm not worried about the offense, and I'm thrilled about the defense from Mark Williams, what we've gotten so far.
Speaking of Mark Williams trying things in that second Summer League game, he attempted a 3. And it was pretty short. It did hit the rim. It wasn't an air ball, so that's positive. But it was well short. Now, I did get a question about this 3-point attempt on my Substack, Every Hornets Boxscore. Go to everyhornetsboxscore.com. You can subscribe for free. I've got all the content free through the preseason, so check that out. Anyway, here's the comment from Casual Hindu, who says, what do you think of his 3-point attempt this game? Would you want to see him try to expand his game right now or stick to the paint, Walker?
I don't mind him taking an open 3 in Summer League. I don't know if I'd want it in the regular season. I don't know if I'd be really mad at it. I don't like that's not going to be a part of his game, his rookie season. As much as I think he has some touch, as much as I think that is a part of his game, I'm not drawing up plays for him to pick and pop outside of 15 feet right now. I'm not saying, okay, yeah, let's go ahead and go to Mark because his guy's so far off of him on the 3-point line and let him have it fly from, 25 feet. No, we're not. That's not going to be a part of it. But I don't mind him taking an open 3, man, in Summer League. This is the time to try some of that stuff. And he is honing in on a lot of the stuff he's going to be doing in the regular season. Did you like him taking that 3? Did you care? Did you have any more thoughts? Like, I kind of liked it.
I did too. I mean, again, summer, as you said, is a time for trying. I just don't want him to fall in love with that aspect because I don't think early in his career that's where he's going to be successful. But I like the idea that he has it, at least in his mind, to develop over time that particular part of the game. But look, he's young. There's plenty of time to get married to a 3-point shot. So I'm cool with him like getting on Tinder and swiping left or swiping right. People still do that. On a 3-point shot. I'm totally cool with that. Go on a few dates with a 3-point shot. That's fine. Have a glass of wine with a 3-point shot. That's cool. But you don't have to get married. You have to get in a serious relationship with a 3-point shot right now. There's all the time in the world for that. Trust me. I've got a baby. I know about all of that stuff. So like don't have a baby with a 3-point shot yet. It's just not time. Here's what I don't want to see. I don't want to see like videos of Mark Williams in the offseason in these first 2 seasons, like taking 1,000 jump shots. I don't think that's what I want to see. I want to see him in the paint, getting physical, focusing on his touch right now because that's what I want to see. I want to see him make layups.
There was a play in the second game. He caught it on the left side of the court, drove in the middle, and kind of gave you this hook where somebody was being physical with him. I forget who was guarding him, but it almost went in, but it didn't seem like a great shot. I wonder if that's a time where you face up, and then I don't know if he even has a quick enough jab step, but those are the types of jump shots I'd like to see. Again, like 15 feet out, somewhere out on the elbow. Yeah, go ahead and take that jump shot if you have a little bit of space. That's still going to spread the floor a little. Mark Williams doesn't have to be this paint clogger on offense. If you can hit that shot from 15, very DeAndre Ayton-esque, then yeah, that can open up the floor for LaMelo to drive, and anybody else for that matter.
Yeah, listen, I mean, you don't have to share a bank account with a 3-point shot, right? You don't have to combine bank accounts, okay? You got plenty of time. Just date a 3-point shot just go on a few dates. That's all I'm saying.
Doug telling Mark Williams to take it slow, very slow, and not have a baby. I think that's good advice. Just don't have a baby with a 3-point shot right now, Mark.
Not with a 3-point
Just settle
shot, no.
for the pick and pop 15-footer. All right, coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
We have a couple of deadlines to discuss regarding Miles Bridges that are coming up and calling for a decision from the Charlotte Hornets organization. We'll get to that in just a moment. Not before we talk about Built Bar. From the people who invented healthy and tasty comes the latest gift to your taste buds. You probably tried the amazing coconut brownie chunk Built Bar, but guess what? Your friends at Built have given Coconut Brownie Chunk the Puffs treatment. That's right. The Coconut Brownie Chunk Built Bar flavor that you love is in a deliciously chewy, marshmallowy, covered in 100% real chocolate bar. It's like a fluffy cloud of coconut brownie goodness. Goodness gracious. Tongue twister. But we're trying to describe just how good it is. All Built Bars are made with collagen protein, which your body absorbs more efficiently and provides tons of health benefits. Eat something that tastes good and is good for you. Delicious coconut, rich, sweet brownie, creamy marshmallow. It's all great stuff. Stop fantasizing now, though, because you can go to Built.com to order your box of coconut brownie chunk Built Puffs right now. Go to Built.com, use promo code LOCKED15, and get 15% off your order. Again, that's Built.com, promo code LOCKED15, 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15. All right, we'll talk about Miles Bridges, some of those deadlines coming up next. Locked On Hornets.
Is Locked On Hornets.
Up assets, and you have to wonder, is there a time for them to do that now?
No,
is he mad at
the center position?
I mean, it's yes. Yeah, God, Mitch, make a trade.
That's just good. That's just good sports talk right there.
It's time for more of the Locked On Hornets podcast.
We need to ask Ollie if he's okay with Mark Williams being the starting center now.
And taking a 3-point shot. Mark Williams.
Does Ollie think Mark needs to marry the 3-point shot? And is he okay with Mark Williams, or is he going to continue to bark once we talk about the center position? I hope that's not a topic of discussion so much anymore. It just might be, though. These veterans, like now we have a Suns-Pacers trade that could happen where both centers would be taken off the market. We'll get to that maybe tomorrow and talk more about the details. Let that cook a little bit. We do have another player to talk about, though, Doug. That's Miles Bridges, because we have some contract deadline stuff coming up. One, we have his court date set for July 20th. There was the report we discussed yesterday from Chris Haynes on NBA TV that the Hornets were going to try to figure out all of the details that come from that July 20th court hearing and make a decision there once they have more information. I guess that's the thing that Chris Haynes kind of refuted on whether they were going to rescind the qualifying offer or not, whatever. But I know you do have some of the details, too, as to a deadline that needs to come up as far as that decision to rescind the qualifying offer.
Well, yeah, there is a deadline, and that deadline is tomorrow for the Hornets to rescind Miles Bridges' qualifying offer and it be just rescinded. The Hornets can say, all right, we're rescinding it, and it's rescinded. After July 13th, both parties would have to agree to rescind the qualifying offer, or Miles Bridges could sign the I think even like right now, Miles Bridges could sign that qualifying offer, which is, by the way, 1 year, $7.9 million. That's the qualifying offer. So I guess the question is, do you expect the Charlotte Hornets to rescind the qualifying offer either today or tomorrow before that deadline?
Yeah, I don't know what they're going to do. And we've gotten some, I don't know if conflicting reports is the right thing to say. I just don't know if we've had too many valid reports yet, because they don't know. And these reporters admit they don't really know what the Hornets are going to do. So yeah, I don't know what the Hornets are going to do right now, Doug. We know that they didn't give Miles Bridges and his party the big time contract, because how could you when this allegation is out there against him right now? So you won't do that. Is it one of those things where the Hornets kind of just lay low, don't do anything, don't pull the qualifying offer at all? Miles Bridges agrees to it, and that's the way they operate by not jump-starting the storyline again, if that makes sense. And so we just say, look, we left the qualifying offer on the table. They agreed to it. We're going to see how it plays out this season and next season, how much we want him to be a part of the organization. And that's a little troublesome to just not do anything. and just kind of try to do Homer Simpson in the bushes and, try to disappear as much as you can, which I think that's what that would be, right? Just not doing anything and then having Miles agree to it. I don't know what the Hornets are going to do right now, Doug. We've had a decent amount of time pass since the incident. We have this court date. We'll see if the Hornets make a decision after that. But yeah, there are some deadlines coming up.
Yeah, with what Chris Haynes said on NBA TV, which was essentially that the Hornets are looking for more clarity on this from that July 20th court date, that would seem to indicate that they are not going to rescind the qualifying offer today or tomorrow before the deadline. It doesn't mean that the qualifying offer doesn't eventually go away. It would just need to be some agreement between the Hornets and Miles Bridges on a parting. And would that make sense? I think, if the details that we've seen so far, the pictures and the video that we've gotten so far from Michelle Johnson, if those come up in the hearing and are clarity enough for the Charlotte Hornets, I think it's clarity enough for a lot of people that listen to this podcast or watch this podcast. It's certainly enough clarity for me. But if it becomes suddenly enough clarity for the Hornets, even though it's after the deadline, there could be discussion between both parties that say, hey, essentially, we're not going to play you, so you can take the qualifying offer, but you would essentially be parking yourself for an entire season. So all of this gets more and more complicated as the days go on, and we don't really have any kind of indication from the Hornets. I did see something from the Rod Boone article in the Charlotte Observer on Cody Martin, that the team, or at least Cody Martin, sort of commented around it. You can go read that in the Charlotte Observer, but essentially they don't have a lot of information. They don't, Cody didn't have full details is the wording he used. But everyone is tiptoeing around this situation right now, essentially waiting for this July 20th court date to take place.
If Miles Bridges is gone from this team, or if they decide to move on from him, we don't even have to go to next year and see what that looks like. Let's just go to the decision, if that takes place, on them rescinding the qualifying offer, allowing him to be a free agent. They decide not to bring him back. This team looks drastically different. That's just what takes place after the situation, after the domestic violence felony charge that Miles Bridges had on him. Cody Martin agrees to an $8 million a year deal. You bring him in. That's the only free agent move they've made, Doug. I mean, this had a real chance to have a lot of turnover on this roster this year, and we didn't see any. Not to this point. The offseason's not done. But like I was just kind of referencing with that Indiana Phoenix trade rumor of DeAndre Ayton going to the Pacers, maybe in exchange for Miles Turner. Now the base compensation thing, the rookie contract, right? Like there's a couple of things to figure out as far as timing for those two teams. But what it does is it would take those two centers off of the table for Charlotte, and at least seemingly so. And so, like, my point being, there's not too many pivotal moves left for the Hornets to make for next season to be better than the one they just previously had, outside of hardcore internal improvement.
And honestly, I hope it's a very naive hope, Walker, because as I've stated previously on this podcast, all evidence on these type of issues around professional athletes committing acts of domestic violence, and this is felony domestic violence where somebody had to go to the hospital and file a report. All of these situations, I just assume that the team is going to act in a completely selfish way, in a way that, makes them the most money, because these teams, time and time again, have made, there's a bet that they make that eventually over time it will be fine, that they can weather the storm, and then in year
They're
2,
right on
3,
that bet.
And then and enough times they've been right on that bet, and that's the sad thing about all of this. But I just want to inform people who are watching or listening to this podcast that, like, if the qualifying offer goes away, and they don't make any kind of offer beyond that to Miles Bridges, the cap situation doesn't improve for the Charlotte. They're still over the cap. It's not as if they can magically make another move to replace what Miles. It's not like they can go out and then make an offer to DeAndre Ayton. They are still they are still dealing with, exceptions and different things and minimal options for improving the roster, even if they rescind the qualifying offer. But I hope that isn't a consideration for the Charlotte Hornets if this July 20 court date confirms, a lot of
right.
what we've seen so far in this story as it's developed.
Right. So I kind of talked about the market drying up. You were talking a little bit about the cap still, right, with that hypothetical scenario. Can you go into some of the details there? Because we do have that cap hold for Miles Bridges. And if he were to sign, then that $16 million cap hold, I believe, would go to 7.9. Because he would just sign the qualifying offer. And then we have Cody and everybody to think about too. Yeah. Like what kind of money left over are we talking about, Doug? Or just what kind of,
there's zero. I mean, even if the cap hold goes away and you have the qualifying offer signed to 7.9 million, they're still, according to the numbers that I see on Cleaning the Glass, which may not be 100% accurate, but gets us pretty close. They're about $4.5 million over the cap. And then there's a luxury tax window that sits at about 39 million. But once you're over the cap, you can't go out and just sign whoever you want. You would then be stuck with, a mid-level exception that's probably going to be around $10.5 million, and then a biannual exception that's somewhere in that like $2 to $4 million range. So their options are going to be pretty limited. You're really, as a team, if you decide to part ways with Miles Bridges, you're really hoping that you A, stay healthy, and B, that you get a lot of internal improvement from guys like Cody Martin, from Terry Rozier, from LaMelo Ball, and PJ Washington's going to be huge. That all sort of lifts and tries to replace what you're missing. But I just want to say it again, because I feel like it's important. I don't think any of that should be a consideration in the decision whether or not to keep Miles Bridges or find a way to part ways with him.
Oh, no, it should have no bearing on what you should do here with Miles, but those would be the results of the decision that would take place for Charlotte, and just trying to inform everybody on that. The last thing I'll say, the way you get better at that point is through trades, and you're going to have to seek all those types of trades, like Kelly Oubre, trade market. Mason Plumlee, are you getting rid of first-round picks? Are you shedding the salary of Gordon Hayward and Terry Rozier? The trade market is still something, and maybe you don't think that happens, that's fine, because you can, again, go to the evidence that isn't there. But if you are asking what is another way the Charlotte Hornets could turn over their roster to some degree, at that point, it used to be draft, free agency, trade market. Free agency, pretty much gone now. Draft, gone now. Now you have the trade market, and that's the only thing you really have left.
Well, so I don't think that's going to happen. And it's not just because I haven't seen evidence that this regime led by Mitch Kupchak can actually pull off those kind of trades. I don't even know if the desire is there, because you have to remember, like, the Hornets are not going to have a lot of leverage in those conversations if that's the way all of this is trending, which means if you want to acquire a player in a trade that could improve your team, you are going to have to do what Minnesota did and essentially unload every future asset you have to acquire that player. And I don't think that just everything that I've heard from this organization leads me to believe that they are not prepared to do that this season. They don't believe that doing that would in return make them a legitimate playoff threat. That's the danger, right? You give up 4 first-round picks and you end up getting bounced in 5 games in the first round. That's the nightmare scenario probably for this organization from their perspective. I'd love to go to a first round from my perspective. But, from their perspective, they don't want to completely decimate their future to try unless they feel like they can be a legitimate playoff threat. So I just don't see them. What I see them probably doing is using those exceptions to bring in a backup point guard and maybe a little bit of help on the big rotation, or maybe a forward that can try to help replace some of that scoring.
All right, let's move on to the next segment. I do want to continue that conversation, though. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
I do want to talk a little bit more about what we were just discussing, how the Hornets roster can change. And then when we discuss internal improvement, that guy right there on the graphic, JT Thor, how worried are we about him through the first 2 games of Summer League? Or is there a defense as to why there have been some struggles there? So we'll talk about JT Thor, some other ways they can change the roster, coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast. As we talk about some of the changes the Hornets need to make to the roster, it all stemmed from that organization thinking they needed to take the next step. They fired James Borrego. They didn't reach the playoffs. They thought they should have, and they didn't reach because they get blown out at another play-in game. It was the second time in a row that it took place, and I can understand how that would be extremely disappointing because I myself am a Hornets fan, and I don't want to see them next year get beat by 25 or more points before they even reach the postseason, before they even get a top 8 seed. And especially when you have some younger guys that you thought were supposed to be better enough to lift this team to that postseason. You would hope that those younger guys only get better. But obviously the calculus changes if Miles Bridges is not on this franchise. So now all of your plans, Doug, they do change significantly in how you operate, which has been clear in how they've operated this free agency period. Maybe you don't think they were going to spend that much money anyway. Fine. But they were clearly going to spend a lot of money on Miles. That was going to happen. Now it's not. They probably would have used their mid-level exception on Cody at that point or something like that, or maybe somebody else. Who knows, right? Like Cody was very real in coming back. But, you know, Doug, like the expectation surrounding this team, it's kind of a mess. And when at the end of last season, if you're going to fire James Borrego, a lot of people didn't like it, okay? I think Hornets fans, mixed feelings, right? It was a polarizing decision. But the idea was that Mitch Kupchak and that Hornets organization weren't happy with where their team ended. And that means that bigger expectations were going to take place this year. And now they have to come back if you don't have Miles Bridges on your roster. And so how do you try to scramble to replace that? Is that happening through the trade market? And if not, then what should the expectations be? How do you operate going forward? Now, they brought in another first-round pick, right, when they traded Jalen Duren away. So they got an extra first-round pick. Do you have to use that to try to enhance your chances of winning next year? Is that more of an indictment now on the Hornets organization because they could have just had another young player if they're going to continue this rebuilding process? You know, and they didn't know, right? Like on draft night, they didn't know that this was going to take place. It's just kind of a mess, Doug. This is all really hard to figure out. And it changes the light in how you talk about this team to a certain degree. It's hard. It's really hard to try to figure out how to talk about this organization.
Yeah, well, because there's so many questions, and Summer League is not really answering a lot of those questions right now. We've got 3 games left, but I don't think, after these 2 Summer League games, you can walk away and say, well, at least player X and player Y are putting up gaudy numbers in Summer League. There's a little bit of hope that they could come in and establish themselves as a regular rotation player. I just haven't seen anyone to this point do that in a way that would make me feel super confident. So I will say that, the Steve Clifford hire was obviously something where they were flat-footed. They've been just caught flat-footed time and time again this offseason, and you have to put some of that on the organization, and you have to put some of that on just bad luck. But the Clifford hire, I think, looks better right now because I'm pretty confident he can come in and establish some internal improvement pretty quickly. I mean, he's done that with this organization before. So if you're saying, well, the only way we're getting better this season is with the players that we have in tow, then I think you're feeling pretty good about Steve Clifford because he's been known to quickly do that.
I don't know, though, man, because we talk about that transition from Steve Clifford to James Borrego. It was because we weren't happy with the player development under Clifford. And even after Borrego's been fired, we talked a lot about that was the one thing he had going for him because of these second round picks that have developed. Mitch Kupchak, Borrego sharing the responsibility, sharing the credit there. And we've seen these guys grow throughout their tenure with the Charlotte Hornets. And so now, if this situation took place, if there was a real chance that Miles Bridges was not going to be on the roster next year, does James Borrego get fired? I don't know. I have no clue if that's going to happen.
Well, the reason Steve Clifford was fired was because his message that initially worked in the first few seasons and got them over the hump, got them 48 wins and almost had them a third seed and almost had the, I mean, there's a lot of almost, it's a lot of horseshoe talk right now. I get it. But it almost had them over the hump in terms of winning a playoff series, but at least it got them to the playoffs. But that message worked. And it took a few years to work because Clifford didn't have a lot of talent when he first got here. He's got a lot more talent this time around.
Is that
and
true?
So if the
without
message,
Miles?
well, still, I mean, you got LaMelo Ball, who's I think actually has superstar ability and has already made an all-star game. I mean, Kemba, it took a few years for Kemba to make an all-star game. So yeah, I mean, I think you've got, and if Gordon Hayward stays healthy, I think you've got a little bit more talent for sure.
That is a drastic
Than the early
hit.
Bobcats years, absolutely.
Well, yeah, I'm not talking about when they win 7 wins and then they come back next year with Steve Clifford or whatever 2 years later, right? Like, I think we're talking about the playoff season when they have Kemba Walker, who's already an all-star at that point. They have Nick Batum, who called for $26 million for whatever team, and somebody was going to pay him.
They still have $9 million in Nick Batum. That's part of the cap issue.
Right, no, for sure. But somebody was going to give it to him, even if you thought it was too much. $20 million is still a talented player. And then you talk about some of these other guys, Jeremy Lin getting some money out there. Like Miles Bridges not being on this team, absolutely. You take a hit in the talent pool. It's why we're changing the expectations for this team a little bit. It's why we're talking about this under a different prism next year than we were at the beginning of the offseason.
Yeah, it takes them from needing to achieve to needing to overachieve. Right? I mean, that's the difference. That's what we've got. Because for the past couple of seasons, I would argue they've underachieved. They should not have gotten blown out in either of those games. And I think in the first season, I would argue they were not going to make it out of the play-in. In this second run in the play-in, I thought they had, if they played well, they had a legitimate shot of coming out of the play-in and getting smoked in the first round of the NBA playoffs. But they didn't achieve. They underachieved. Now you're looking at them and going, okay, they've got to overachieve in order to get to some of these goals. But I'm just saying, like, I think the one thing I'm hanging a little bit of hope on is that Clifford has proven in 2 organizations now that he can come in and establish better defense pretty immediately. And Cody Martin in that article, in that interview that he did with Rod Boone, seem to be looking forward to that from everything that Cody Martin has heard, because he's never worked with Steve Clifford before, but that Steve Clifford is a no nonsense guy, and Cody Martin seemed to allude to the fact that, hey, we maybe need a little bit of that. We need a little bit of no nonsense, need a little bit of discipline on this team to achieve the things that we want to achieve. So I'm just, again, I get it. If you want to have despair, I would understand. But I'm hanging a little bit of hope on that.
Oh, I mean, it's not that I want to. I'm just asking questions.
You want to live? No, you want to live in a deep well of despair, and that's fine. I don't want to do that. I'm climbing out of the well.
Hey, there you go. A Charlotte Hornet fan, a Steve Clifford fan. We are looking at the optimism surrounding this franchise, and it's kind of tough to do that right now, to be honest with you. Everything going on. I just think everything changes, right? Like that's my question, because of all of the different turns that the Hornets have made. The way you talk about this team, expectations, what they've done, what they could have done, what they're going to do. Everything changes based off of what they've done now. And would you have changed stuff they've already done because of other happenings? Like I can't think of another offseason in Hornets history that has looked anywhere close to this. And all right, well, now we got to start from scratch. We gotta do something different. Yeah, like I just think
Well, you're
it's
not
really
starting
hard.
from scratch. That's the whole point. You've got to look internally to improve some of the things that you have because you're not starting from scratch. You still have several years.
And
of
LaMelo
Gordon
doesn't
Hayward.
allow you to do that.
LaMelo, yeah, you can't start from scratch. The clock is ticking on LaMelo Ball at this point. You've got to work with what you have. You got to work within the confines of reality because it doesn't seem like anyone wants to trade for Gordon Hayward. They haven't gotten anyone to bite on Terry Rozier. So, at this point, you've just got to double back and you got to live in the present. There's no point. The future doesn't exist. The past doesn't exist. It's all about the present moment and who you got. Assemble who you have. Avengers assemble. Let's go out there and win a ball game.
You want to bring back
That's
the
my
Avengers.
speech.
You want to bring back Kemba Walker, Malik Monk, Dwayne Bacon. Remember they
he's
called
on
themselves the Avengers.
Yeah, Kemba Walker. Jeremy Lin's available too. Bring them all back. Let's do it. Let's run back 2016.
All right, there's your speech. We're not going to have time to get to JT Thor. We'll talk about him tomorrow. Maybe
Oh, no, he's turning into Mason Plumlee. JT Thor's turning into Mason Plumlee.
We can't treat him like that. We have to give JT Thor his own segment. We were going to do it today, but the second segment conversation had continued into the third. We'll get to JT Thor tomorrow. I promise you. That'll do it for today's episode of Locked On Hornets. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your pods. So is Locked On NBA. So make that your second listen. Get up to date on the latest news and rumors in the NBA in just 30 minutes. Locked On NBA, your daily NBA update, again, in just 30 minutes. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow.